Long before the Great Flood covered the earth, the world was very different from the one we know today. The rivers were wider, the forests were deeper, massive mountains stretched into the clouds. Strange creatures roamed the land, and people lived much longer lives than they do now. But hidden beneath the beauty of that ancient world was something dark, something so terrible that heaven itself could no longer stay silent. The Bible gives only a few mysterious verses about this forgotten time. But ancient writings and old traditions describe a world filled with corruption, violence, and fear. And at the center of it all were beings known as the Nephilim. Many people believe the Nephilim were giants. Others believe they were mighty warriors or rulers who spread terror across the earth. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: they were not normal humans. Their story begins in the days before Noah built the ark. Back then, humanity was growing quickly across the earth. Families became tribes, tribes became cities, and cities became kingdoms. People learned how to farm the land, raise animals, and build great structures from stone and wood. At first, the world seemed full of promise. Children played in crowded marketplaces. Farmers worked under the hot sun. Shepherds led sheep across green hills. Music echoed through growing cities at night. But as humanity grew stronger, people also became more prideful. Violence slowly spread from city to city. Men fought for power. Kings became cruel. Innocent people were treated badly. Greed filled the hearts of many. And according to ancient traditions, something else was happening high above the earth. Certain angels were watching humanity. These angels were called watchers. They were meant to serve heaven and obey God. They had seen the glory of heaven with their own eyes. They knew the power of the Creator. But some of them became curious about the human world. Day after day, they watched people living on the earth below. They saw human beauty, human emotions, human desires, and slowly the hearts of these angels changed. One ancient text says the watchers began speaking to each other in secret. They made dangerous plans. They wanted to leave heaven. They wanted to go down to earth. And they wanted to take human women as wives. Their leader was said to be an angel called Shemahaza. According to tradition, he feared that the others might change their minds after descending to earth. So the angels made an oath together, a promise that none of them would turn back. Then came the day that changed the world forever. The watchers descended from heaven. Ancient stories claim they came down upon a mountain called Hermon. As they appeared, the sky trembled. Winds howled across the rocks. Fear spread among nearby people, because these were not ordinary beings. They shined with supernatural power. The humans who saw them could hardly understand what stood before them. Some people worshipped them immediately. Others ran in terror. But the fallen angels did not return to heaven. Instead, they stayed among humans. At first, many people were amazed by them. The watchers seemed wise and powerful. They knew things no human understood. They spoke of the stars, the heavens, and hidden secrets. And then they began teaching mankind forbidden knowledge. One angel taught humans how to make weapons of war. Men learned to forge sharp swords from metal. Spears and shields soon followed. Armies became stronger and more deadly than ever before. Another taught people about sorcery and dark enchantments. Others revealed secrets about astrology and signs in the heavens. Some taught people how to use plants and chemicals for dangerous purposes. Ancient traditions even claim certain fallen angels taught humans how to create paints, jewelry, and seductive cosmetics that increased vanity and temptation. The world began changing rapidly. Cities became more advanced, but they also became more corrupt. Violence spread like fire through dry grass. Powerful rulers used weapons to conquer weaker people. Bloodshed became common. Fear filled entire regions. And then something even more shocking happened. The fallen angels took human wives. From these unions came children unlike any the world had ever seen before. The Nephilim. The stories describe them as giant beings with enormous strength and terrifying power. As they grew older, their size became impossible to ignore. They towered above normal humans. Some traditions claim they were warriors so mighty that entire armies feared them. Others describe them as cruel rulers who treated ordinary people like slaves. Parents warned their children not to wander far from villages. Travelers feared the roads at night. Villages built walls for protection. Because the Nephilim were growing stronger and stranger, ancient writings claim their hunger became enormous. Normal food was no longer enough for them. At first, they consumed huge amounts of crops and animals. Entire fields were emptied just to feed a few of them. This caused famine in many places. Poor families starved while giant rulers demanded more food. But according to some ancient traditions, the darkness only grew worse. The Nephilim became violent, merciless, bloodthirsty. The earth was slowly turning into a place of fear, and heaven was watching it all happen. The fallen angels had crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed. They had abandoned their place in heaven and corrupted the human world. The knowledge they brought was changing mankind faster than people could handle. Weapons created endless wars. Sorcery spread confusion and fear. Violence filled cities and villages alike. And the Nephilim stood at the center of it all like giant shadows over the earth. The Bible describes this time with chilling words. It says the earth became corrupt in God's sight, and it was filled with violence. Everywhere Noah looked, wickedness was growing. People no longer cared about goodness or truth. The strong crushed the weak. Kings ruled through fear. Blood soaked the ground. And still the Nephilim continued growing in power. Some ancient stories even claim they began calling themselves gods among men. Human rulers bowed before them. Temples were built in their honor. And ordinary people became trapped in a world consumed by corruption. But while darkness covered the earth, one man was different. His name was Noah. Unlike the violent people around him, Noah still followed God. He refused to join the corruption spreading across the world. While others chased power and wickedness, Noah remained faithful. And because of this, God chose him for a special purpose. A purpose that would soon change human history forever. Because the time of judgment was coming. The cries of suffering humanity had reached heaven. And soon, the world would face a flood unlike anything ever seen before. The world was no longer the peaceful place it had once been. Everywhere Noah looked, violence had taken over. Cities that once rang with music and celebration were now filled with fear. Thick smoke rose from burned villages. Soldiers marched through crowded streets carrying bronze swords and spears taught to them by the fallen angels. The strong ruled over the weak, and above them all stood the Nephilim. Some were called kings, others were worshipped as gods. But behind their power was something much darker. Ancient traditions say the Nephilim became filled with pride and rage. They no longer saw humans as equals. To them, ordinary people were small, weak, and unimportant. Many humans became slaves under giant rulers. Huge stone palaces were built for the Nephilim while poor families starved outside city walls. Workers carried massive stones under the burning sun while armed guards watched over them. Fear controlled everything. At night, families locked themselves inside their homes. Mothers held their children close whenever heavy footsteps echoed through the streets. Because when the Nephilim became angry, entire villages could disappear. The ancient world had become dangerous beyond imagination. But the giants were not the only problem. The fallen angels continued spreading forbidden knowledge across the earth. Azazel, one of the most feared watchers, taught humans how to create stronger weapons and armor for war. Soon, black smoke poured from giant furnaces day and night as men forged blades sharper than ever before. Armies grew larger. Battles became bloodier. Kingdom fought against kingdom. Ancient traditions claim rivers sometimes ran red with blood after great wars. Other fallen angels taught humans dark spiritual practices. Sorcery spread from city to city. People searched for hidden power through strange rituals and forbidden ceremonies. Priests stood before fire-lit altars speaking mysterious words into the night. Some people no longer prayed to God at all. Instead, they worshipped power. They worshipped violence. And many worshipped the Nephilim themselves. Huge temples were raised in honor of giant rulers. Massive stone statues stood over cities while crowds brought gifts and sacrifices. The Nephilim enjoyed being feared. They enjoyed being treated like gods. And as their power grew, so did their cruelty. Ancient stories claim some Nephilim became so violent that even other humans who served them lived in terror. They fought each other constantly, battling for power, land, and worship. The earth shook beneath endless wars. Smoke darkened the skies. Blood covered the ground. The Bible says every imagination of mankind's heart had become evil continually. That means wickedness had spread almost everywhere. People no longer cared about truth, kindness, or justice. Corruption ruled the world. And according to ancient writings, the Nephilim's hunger became even worse. At first, they consumed animals and crops in enormous amounts. Entire farms could barely feed a single giant household. But as famine spread, desperation grew. Food became scarce in many cities. Families fought each other for bread and grain. Children cried from hunger. And some ancient traditions make an even more terrifying claim. They say the Nephilim eventually turned against humans themselves. The giants who once ruled mankind now filled the earth with even greater horror. Fear spread into every corner of the world. Travelers vanished on lonely roads. Villages disappeared without warning. People whispered terrible stories around fires late at night. Stories about giant warriors who could destroy entire groups of men alone. Stories about rulers so cruel that even hardened soldiers feared them. The earth was drowning in violence, and heaven could see all of it. The archangels looked down upon the suffering of mankind. According to ancient traditions, angels named Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel witnessed the corruption spreading across the earth. They saw innocent people crying out for help. They saw violence destroying nations. They saw the fallen watchers leading humanity deeper into darkness. And they brought these cries before God. One ancient text describes heaven becoming silent as the suffering of humanity was revealed. The fallen angels had broken the order of creation itself. They had corrupted mankind. They had revealed forbidden secrets. And their children, the Nephilim, had filled the earth with bloodshed. Judgment was now coming. But while most of the world embraced evil, Noah remained different. He did not worship the Nephilim. He did not follow the corruption around him. While kings built armies, Noah obeyed God. While people trusted violence, Noah trusted righteousness. Many mocked him for it. Some probably thought he was foolish. How could one man remain faithful in a world ruled by giants and corruption? But Noah continued walking with God. Then one day God spoke to Noah. The message was terrifying. The earth had become completely corrupt. Violence covered the land, and judgment was about to fall upon the world. God told Noah to build an enormous ark, not a small fishing boat, not a simple raft. An enormous vessel large enough to survive a disaster unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Noah likely could not fully understand what was coming. No rainstorm in history had ever threatened the whole world. Yet Noah obeyed. Day after day, he began building the ark. Massive wooden beams were cut and carried across the land. The sound of hammering echoed through valleys as the giant structure slowly rose higher and higher. People gathered to watch. Some laughed. Others mocked him openly. They could not understand why Noah was building such a massive ship far from the sea. The wicked world believed life would continue forever. The Nephilim especially had little reason to fear. They were powerful, strong, almost unstoppable. What danger could possibly threaten giants who ruled the earth? But the skies themselves were beginning to change. Dark clouds slowly gathered more often. Cold winds swept across the land. Animals began acting strangely. Birds shifted their migration patterns. Large groups of creatures moved across valleys and deserts as if obeying an invisible command. People noticed these strange signs, but most ignored them. The Nephilim ignored them too. They continued feasting, fighting, conquering, and ruling through fear. Meanwhile, Noah kept building. Every strike of his hammer brought the world one step closer to judgment. And somewhere above the earth, heaven prepared for the day the flood would begin. The day of judgment was getting closer, but the people of the ancient world refused to listen. Noah continued building the ark exactly as God commanded. The giant wooden structure now stood high above the land like a warning to the entire world. Anyone could see it. Anyone could ask Noah why he was building it. But most people only laughed. Some mocked Noah openly in the streets. Others called him mad. Why would anyone build a giant ship so far from the sea? They asked. The Nephilim laughed louder than all the others. To them, Noah was weak. The giants trusted their strength, their armies, and their power. They believed nothing could destroy them. After all, they ruled the earth. Who could stand against being strong enough to terrify entire nations? But while humanity mocked Noah, strange signs continued appearing across the world. The skies grew darker more often. Thunder rolled across mountains even on clear days. Cold winds blew through cities without warning. Animals behaved in unusual ways. Huge flocks of birds crossed the skies together. Wild animals suddenly left forests and traveled across the land in massive groups. People watched these things with confusion and fear, yet most still ignored the warnings. Their hearts had become too hard. Violence and corruption had blinded them. Meanwhile, Noah and his family continued preparing the ark. Day after day, they carried supplies into the massive vessel. Large baskets of grain, dried fruit, oil, tools, and water containers filled its rooms. The ark was enormous. Ancient measurements describe it as larger than almost any wooden ship built in the ancient world. 3 massive levels stretched upward into the sky. Inside were countless rooms for animals, food, and Noah's family. Many people likely stared at it in amazement, but still they refused to repent. Then something happened that shocked the world. Animals began arriving, not in small numbers, in pairs, from every direction. Birds filled the skies above the ark. Sheep, cattle, deer, lions, wolves, and creatures from distant lands moved toward Noah together. People stopped and watched in disbelief. The animals were not attacking each other. Predators walked beside weaker creatures peacefully. It was as if an invisible force was guiding them. Children pointed toward the growing lines of animals. Crowds gathered around Noah's ark in confusion. Some people probably felt fear for the first time, but the Nephilim still refused to believe danger was coming. The giant rulers continued feasting inside their great halls. Music echoed through their palaces while servants carried endless food before them. Outside, storms slowly gathered over the earth. Then came the final warning. God told Noah it was time to enter the ark. Noah gathered his wife, his sons, and their wives. Together they entered the enormous vessel along with the animals. The sky above them had become dark and heavy. Winds swept dust across the land. Many people watched from a distance. Some laughed until the very end. Others stared silently, feeling deep fear they could not explain. Then the door of the ark closed. Ancient traditions say God himself sealed it shut. And suddenly the world became quiet. An unnatural silence spread across the land. Even the proud rulers of the earth may have felt something was terribly wrong. Then it happened. A single drop of rain fell from the sky. Then another, and another. People looked upward in confusion. Soon rain began pouring across the earth. first, many probably laughed again. It was only rain. What danger could rain bring to mighty cities and giant warriors? But the rain did not stop. The skies opened with terrifying force. Thunder shook the earth. Lightning flashed across black clouds. Water poured down endlessly. Then the ground itself began to break apart. Ancient scripture says the fountains of the deep burst open. Great cracks split the earth. Massive floods erupted upward from beneath the ground while endless rain crashed down from above. Panic spread instantly. People ran through flooded streets screaming for safety. Families climbed rooftops. Animals cried out in terror. Rivers overflowed within hours. Entire villages disappeared beneath rushing water. The mighty cities of the ancient world began collapsing. Stone towers crumbled. Walls broke apart. Temples fell into the flood. And still the rain continued. The Nephilim finally understood. This was not an ordinary storm. This was judgment. The giant warriors who once terrified nations now struggled against rising waters. Some ancient traditions describe the giants trying to flee toward mountains. Others say they attempted to fight against the flood itself. But human strength meant nothing against the power of God. The waters rose higher and higher. Forests vanished beneath the flood. Roads disappeared. Palaces sank beneath crashing waves. The proud kingdoms of the earth were erased. People cried out desperately for rescue, but it was too late. For 40 days and 40 nights, rain covered the world. The ark rose above the waters while chaos swallowed everything below. Inside the ark, Noah and his family listened to the storm around them. The wooden vessel groaned as waves crashed against it. Outside was darkness, thunder, death. But inside the ark was safety. God had protected the one man who remained faithful in a corrupted world. Month after month, floodwaters covered the earth. Even the highest mountains disappeared beneath the waters. The world of the Nephilim was gone. The giant rulers, the violent kingdoms, the fallen watchers' corruption, all of it vanished beneath the flood. Silence finally returned to the earth. The storms ended, the rain stopped, and the ark floated alone upon an endless sea. But even after the flood, questions remained. Were the Nephilim completely destroyed, or did traces of them somehow survive?